Greetings, fellow slingers. Welcome back to Roll the Hard 20 podcast. It is I, your trusted Dungeon Master, Brian, welcoming you once again to the show. Who's ready to warm up their dice and top out their glass? I know that I am. You know, as we slowly come out of our hovels as the quarantine begins to fade, I think we're all trying to find the handholds that will help us traverse these new times. I know that as the coordinator for Roll the Hard 20 podcast, it's been a difficult ride. It's hard to accept not being an essential business. And so during our downtime, we put out some less than quality material via Skype and put it up on YouTube. And I know that the story's great and Kusha's doing a great job running us through. But really, I think the sound quality, it's just not up to our standard. But as long as we're trying to get something out to all of you fellow slingers, I think that's very important. But you know, it wasn't until several weeks later after this quarantine had been implemented that everything started coming back alive. But the shadow of what once loomed over us during the quarantine phases of our lives can still darken our skies. By way of extension, one of the hard slingers here had to self-quarantine as he got tested, forcing him to miss his first Father's Day and put the show back a week. I think his foreman's wife had the corona, who passed it on to the foreman, who passed it on and then got passed on, and I think even Kevin Bacon got tested somewhere in that thread. But coupled that with another hard slinger prepping for his exams, and well, I'm sorry to say we came up short this week, but not for lack of trying. And so I'm going to bring to you a mid-break episode. So bear with me as I digress about the show. So we've been running the Carrion Crown Adventure path for a little over a year. Episode 0, Lair of the Beast, came out May 19th of 2019. And right out of the gate, we made this AP our very own. By introducing Episode 0, Parts 1 and Part 2, I made it known that no other Carrion Crown AP would play out the same as ours. It just goes without saying that whenever a Dungeon Master puts his handprint on something and starts messing with the dials, it's definitely going to become your baby at that point. I've listened to a few other actual play adventure paths, and having looked at the original source material of those APs, until you decide to take away player agency, which is never recommended in my opinion, I strongly believe that most of those adventure paths will differ, even to a lesser degree from their original intent. And listening back to the excerpts of the show from Book 1, we added quite a few personal elements to our Carrion Crown, such as the killing off of several key NPCs to add a sense of direness to the narrative, that if the heroes didn't handle what was going on in Ravengrove soon, that it was going to handle them. And if you know anything about me, you know that most of my NPCs have an expiration date of like a carton of milk being left out in the sun. They just don't last that long. Also, having one of the PCs invest in owning property in town gave a sense of belonging to that PC and made him more invested in what was going on in Ravengrove. We also had one of the PCs pitting two of Ravengrove's proprietors against one another through theft and deception, which became problematic for getting to their resolution towards the end of that book, especially when those NPCs that had been double-crossed by the very people who now needed them were required. And then there was the tagging out of a PC so he could follow a narrative thread that had been set up by a villain whose in-game had yet to be revealed, yet was crucial to his own background. That left a void for the player to bring in another character whose very being tied this AP to our homebrewed Riders on the Storm campaign. I'm revealing all this not to give anything away, but rather as an example how published adventure paths have a way of becoming yours. As dependents of your lives, they have a way of becoming your children. So nurture them and help them grow into something amazing, but give them enough agency to dynamically evolve. Moving on, as I said, I would be digressing throughout this whole thing, and probably not going to be that long anyways. I would like to give a little insight behind the curtain to the Rage Room. You know, when I first started prepping for this show, I did a lot of research on the kind of equipment that would be required, what it would cost, and how I was going to afford it. Also, how I was going to justify it, because it would be an investment, and it was. But in the end, a way was found. But as I learned, a lot of this equipment can have a shelf life, and depending on the environment, that life can be shortened considerably. Just in the past few weeks, I had to replace 3 cables that took a crap, 2 XLRs and one 10-foot audio jack. I had to buy another set of dynamic mics, as over the past year and a half, 3 of the 6 went belly up. And if that wasn't all, I began to notice one channel was lower than the rest. And since that particular channel was the DM's, mine, well, I thought that one was important. I did a lot of research on what could be causing it, even going so far as contacting Mackie, the company who makes the mixer we use. They referred me to a local company, if over 60 miles away can be considered local, and after contacting them, I was told it would cost me about $200 just to have them look at it. That didn't include any repairs or anything else, just for them to tell me what was wrong with this. And well, that was pretty close to what I paid for this thing. So I did a little more research into the condition I was having with this thing, and that led me to believe that there was a problem with the gain pot. And so I put my technical skills to work. I tore it down, I cleaned and serviced all the pots and sliders and reassembled it. And well, I was able to save a little cheddar, and I'm using it right now as we're talking. You know, since the inception of the show, it was always my hopes of having the podcast represented on multiple apps. Sure, I wanted to be on Apple Podcasts and Google Play, but I wanted to be able to get it out there on other platforms as well. You know, it did take some time, but eventually we found a home on Spotify and Stitcher and iHeartRadio and a couple of other podcast platforms that I wasn't even aware existed until I did a Google search of the show, and they just started populating. It's like, well, I guess we're out there. You can see our logo and everything. But it wasn't until my good friend and brother Sammy, the artist and creator of that specific logo, suggested we put the show on YouTube. And with that under our belt, I covered nearly all of our bases. And that left only one thing remaining: all of you. You know, I've said it many times before, but it's true. Let's face it, this show exists for entertainment purposes. No one can deny that. But who's it going to entertain if there's no audience? And that audience, my fellow slingers, is you. Each and every one of you. A lot of shit gets cut from the show. Maybe one golden nugget makes it as the blooper on the back end of the show. But the other stuff is when someone gets up to take a piss or to take a call. When I screw something up and I gotta look it up and recheck it. But there's also parts that get cut where we're wondering about the listeners. Whether or not that joke hit home or it should be cut. Was it too offensive? Do we think that other people will get this joke? Sure. I mean, there's always something that winds up on the cutting room floor. But as always, we're mindful of all of you. So keep us in your hearts and please be patient as we all navigate this world that's unfolding around us almost daily, if not hourly. So remember, you could get in touch with this show at rollthehard20podcast@gmail.com. You could check out the website at rollthehard20podcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Remember, we can also be found on YouTube, and we have posted all of our archive episodes on there as well through the different playlists. And if anyone can swing it, we can sure use it. Head on over to patreon.com/rollthehard20podcast and check us out over there as well. You know, I don't want to make this sound like it's anything more than what it is. I just really wanted to put something out there for all of you fellow slingers, all my hard slinger friends out there, the people that have actually gotten in touch with me through the different platforms, or they've written in and they've wished me happy birthday to the DM of Roll the Hard 20 podcast, or they want to friend me some way, or they get in touch with me through Instagram and they say, hey, you know, whereabouts are you located? And I say, well, we're in Foothill Ranch, California. It's like, oh man, I wish you were closer because I really, really want to jump in a game of D&D. And I hope that everybody out there is actually finding that game that they want to be in. You know, I actually stopped reading a lot of my footnotes at this point, and I'm telling it from the heart, because I think that everybody out there, if you're doing something you love, then carry on, because there is a niche for everybody. You ever look up something wonky on eBay, just something out of the ordinary, like maybe a tack hammer, and you see that it's got 5 people that are watching this thing, or maybe even 2 bidders. It's like, why would anybody want this obscure object that I suddenly have a desire to have. It's just telling you, you are not alone in a hobby or an interest that you may have. Other people have these things all the time. So please try to get in touch with fellow people, whether you can play it online with somebody via Skype or Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or whatever else they have out there, or try to get together with people in person. I know you got to put on your DEFCON 4 suits with your full-on face mask, shields, and you got to go through the blast showers to get into their living room so you guys could sit across from each other with this 4-inch plexiglass separating you, and you got the intercoms that go, okay, I rolled it 18. That is a hit. Roll your damage. You got all this stuff going on. Eventually, all this shit is going to die off. It's all going to go away. We'll all be back face to face, and let's just keep partying on. Tighten up the chin strap and loosen up the sword, and we will make this happen. So, until we put out something else, maybe a little longer, a little more intriguing. I did try to get some of the other hard slingers to come over and put something together, but once we missed our target night for the week, it all kind of fell apart on the back end. So I am sorry about that, but I did want to get something out there and let each and every one of you listeners out there know that I am thinking of you, and I'm grateful that you guys listen to the show and you have a good time with it. And if there's anything you guys want to talk about, like I said, feel free, drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, until next time, take it easy.